The microphone. Oh, there we go. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny panel. During the live broadcast, members and officers are asked to please ensure that mobile phones are placed in silent mode and that microphones are switched off whilst not in use. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. Helen, do we have any apologies, please?
Yes, good afternoon. We've got apologies from Councillor Booth and Councillor Roy. Thank you.
Agenda item 2 is a request to approve the minutes. We're being asked to approve the public minutes at pages 3 to 10 of the public agenda pack as a correct record of the meeting, which took place on the 14th of July 2025. Can I ask any member who does not agree with the minutes to indicate that now? Thank you. I see no objections. So the proposal to approve the minutes as a correct record of the meeting, so they are now agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 3 is urgent items. There are no urgent items for consideration today. Agenda item 4 is to receive any declarations of interest under the local code of conduct or any interest under the code of conduct on planning matters in respect of any of the items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, please can you inform the meeting now? No raised hands, thank you all. Agenda item 5 is an update from Clarion Housing Association. Welcome to, it's like an army.
Trying to outnumber us.
There's only one more committee member than there is representatives from Clarion. So, anyway, welcome to today. Could I ask that you introduce yourselves and then also give us a brief overview of your role in relation to this report, so that we can then we'll know who list for the minutes, etc. So when you're ready, if you'd like to start your presentation, thank you.
Of course, if it's okay, we'll introduce ourselves as we do each part of the presentation. Does that work? Yeah.
No, sorry.
Or you want it at the beginning?
No, introduce yourselves and then go straight into the presentation.
So all of us So I'm Sue Stavers. I'm Regional Director of Housing for the East Region.
I'm Sally Greetham. My job is Regional Housing Lead, so I manage the teams that deal with things like antisocial behaviour in Ed's area.
Good afternoon, my name is Carl Grimmer. I'm the Regional Thank you. I'll start again. Apologies. Good afternoon, my name is Carl Grimmer. I'm the Regional Repair Lead, and I cover Clarion Response, so we're responsible for all the housing, day-to-day repairs and void or empty home management. Thank you.
I'm Dan Reid. I'm the Head of Land and Partnerships for the North Region at Clarion and Latimer, so I deliver new build homes across the country.
I'm Adam Collier, the Planned Investment Manager for Cambridgeshire. I oversee sustainable homes and component improvements to our housing stock.
Hi, I'm Tracy Thompson. I work in the communities team for Clarion Futures, which is a charitable arm of Clarion Housing.
Good afternoon, I'm Maria Walker and I'm a Clarion Futures Communities Officer and I cover the Fenland area.
Of course, thank you. So it's been about 5 years since I've been here. I can see one or two familiar faces, but it is lovely to be back because I've been working in another region. So nice to be back almost home because I live in the east. So I just wanted to start with giving a bit of external context to the world in which Clarion is operating, and I appreciate you will all have your own financial challenges, so some of this will resonate with you as a local authority. So we do definitely have some challenges, and I've listed just a few of them there, and the key ones, and that is rent restrictions and below target rents. So we used to have a rent formula, any of you who worked in housing when it's local authority stock, where we could increase our rents slightly above inflation to get us to target rents, and we don't have that ability now. And that is costing us, up to this point, about £140 million, and continues to cost us about £17 million per annum in reduced rents that we would otherwise be able to charge if the rent regime was as it once was. Leak, stamps and mould, you all know about Awab's law. That has cost us around £5 million so far. And again, you will see this with in your own housing register, that there's an increasing vulnerability amongst our customers. You'll see it within your constituents as well. And that retraction of statutory services, meaning that more and more falls on landlords and voluntary services to actually pick up and support those people living in our communities. And there's no additional income for us to be able to do that, but of course we do need to do that to make sure that our tenancies are sustained as best as we can. And the cost of living impact on our customers, and again you'll see that through your own constituents, that people are struggling out there, and we, particularly with our Futures Arms, we try and fill some of those gaps where we're able to do. We can't do everything, but it all puts financial pressure on us. And then looking ahead, Awab's law went live last week, so this presentation was sent over to you just before that, so it's down here as a future. But again, that's going to continue to cost us about £5 million each year. Revised decent home standards, so that's increasing. It's right that it does. Standards have increased, so it's right that we invest in our stock. But again, each time we get a void property, that's adding about £1,000 onto one of our properties. And of course, we do work in our existing stock as well. And then regulatory costs, so the increased costs. And we've just had our inspection. I'm pleased to report that we got a C2, which is the customer element, which recognises that we are compliant with the requirements of our regulator. Does acknowledge that we do have some improvements to make, but all of those improvements are things that we knew that we needed to do and things that we're already working on. And we got a G1 for governance, that's the top grade, and also a V1 for financial viability. So that's this, quite a good position. Do you want me to carry on? Has anybody got any questions about that? Yeah. Of course, yeah. Of course. So the observant amongst you will notice that I'm not Paul Norman, who was supposed to be doing this next session. Unfortunately, Paul is our Director of Assets, and he was due to be with us today, but he's called in unwell this morning. So I've got his slides. I'm going to show them to you and talk to them as best I can. If, however, there are questions arising from these that I can't answer, or somebody around the table can't answer, we're happy either to come away and answer the questions or to get Paul back at another time to do a separate presentation, because I know that our asset condition is something that you, I think, as members are particularly interested in. So here are the kind of 6 pillars of our asset strategy. It looks at what we need to do to improve the condition and our knowledge. So first of all, we need to understand. We need to understand our homes. We need to understand the condition that they are in. We need to make sure that we have the right types of home, and we need to make sure that they are in the right location. We also need to make sure that our homes are safe. So we talk about decent homes. We talk about Awab's law and general investment in our stock. We need to make sure that our homes are sustainable, that people can afford to live in them, and that they aren't damaging the environment. And then we have something called place shaping, which is very much beyond the asset, and it's about where our homes are in a community, how does that community work as a whole, not just how does the property work. And then making sure that we are financially resilient so we can continue to invest in our homes and our services. So I'm just going to cover off some of the main themes in Paul's slide there. So the first thing is about understanding our homes and how we do that and why we do that. So we have a legal and a regulatory requirement to do that. We need to understand what our assets are and what condition they are in. And we have a strategy, therefore, that drives improvement and makes sure that our stock is in a good condition. And that strategy will have a range of different things, from investing in new build properties to repairing and renewing components, to large-scale regeneration, and sometimes to sale. And I know, again, that's something we probably want to pick up as a committee. So we have all of those tools available to us, and we do an options appraisal on our stock to basically make those decisions as to what happens to individual units and to larger schemes as well. The next part, making sure I've got the right slide, is decarbonisation. So again, that's around the environment, and it's making sure that we hit that net zero. We have a commitment to do that, and part of that is about replacing fossil fuels with more renewable energies and helping to reduce our customers' energy bills and making sure that, as best we can, that they do not fall into fuel poverty. And you can see some numbers there in terms of specific to Fenland. So that's that we've invested £30 million in the last 5 years. And we expect to invest another £11 million or so in the next 3 years. And we've retrofitted around 377 properties to date, and that retrofit will include lots of different aspects of what we have up there. And the last slide from what would have been from Paul is around us having a sustainable business and financially resilient model. So that's really saying how we balance to make sure that we are working efficiently, but also making those quite difficult decisions about some of our assets, but also leveraging in additional funding opportunities. So where there's government funding, I know we've done that in Finland, where we can bring in extra money to make sure that our stock is in the best possible condition it can be for the people living in our homes in Finland. So now I'm going to pass over to Sally. Put that one in.
So, yeah, my name's Sally Greatham, as I say, and my role is Regional Housing Lead, and that means I look after the teams that manage the people in our homes. So one element of that is managing antisocial behaviour. So I included just a snapshot of reports of antisocial behaviour for the month of August. What we have seen is an increase in reports of antisocial behaviour this year compared to previous years. That's not unique to Finland. We've seen that across our stock nationwide, approximately about a 25% increase. And what we usually see is higher levels of antisocial behaviour in the summer, and they tend to drop down as we hit the autumn, which hasn't happened as it has in previous years. So we have had a particular challenge in more reports of antisocial behaviour. We have brought in some more resources to the team to try and support them to manage that. I just thought I'd share a little bit of a particular focus we've had in the Wisbech area. So of all of our clarion stock in Finland, over 50% is in the Wisbech area. And we have had some, I'm sure you're all familiar with some particular challenges in that locality in terms of more reports of antisocial behaviour plus some quite sort of challenging issues. So we sort of embarked on a bit of a partnership project with the police, but also your Fenland District Council to try and really focus in on those challenges. And we've got a great tenancy specialist team. Tenancy specialists manage antisocial behaviour, and they've been kind of really working with local agencies like yourself and the police to try and reduce antisocial behaviour and also make sure tenants in the area feel a little bit safe. I've put on the previous slide the particular objectives they wanted to focus on. So we sort of identified a particular area. We've been sort of trying to raise awareness, as I say, in conjunction with the police and in conjunction with you guys. A lot of it is relied on really good multi-agency working so that we can try and make sure we're putting environmental improvements into the right place. And we're part of that, as I say, we were able to draw upon some funding from the Police Crime Commissioner to help with some additional CCTV and lighting in the area. But we've been sort of working very closely with your rough sleepers team to make sure we're engaging with agencies, that those individuals that can support vulnerable people that are in the area. Because what we found is a lot of the issues have not necessarily been from clarion tenancies, but sometimes our tenants have been the victim of things like cookering in those localities. So we've been trying to really focus on that multi-agency approach to tackle it, and we have started to see some positive benefits to that. So just a bit of a snapshot, and as I say, this was kind of over quite a short space of time. We've seen a reduction in complaints to the police of antisocial behaviour. We have also been sort of just really making best use of the various tools that we've got, because of course the police have got some tools, Clarion as a landlord have got other tools, and we've just been trying to sort of keep in regular contact with those other agencies to make sure we're using the right tools at the right place. So for example, it might be that even though it's not a Clarion tenant, there might be an opportunity for us to use a particular tool to try and exclude somebody from an area. I think one of the questions I got asked in advance of this presentation was whether or not this approach could be replicated elsewhere. The answer to that is potentially yes. I suppose the advantage we've got here is that Clarion has got a significant amount of stock in this locality, so therefore it's, I guess, means we've already got a lot more presence in the area. But we've tried to, there's certainly things that we can learn, particularly around partnership and sharing information, which could be sort of moved to other localities as well. But it's been a real sort of cross-organisation team effort to reduce things, and the work is not done there. I mean, by no means there'll no doubt be ongoing challenges, but I think we feel like we've got a really good, strong partnership sort of connection there between Fenland Police and Clarion to stand us in good stead in dealing with issues moving forward. I'm going to
Good afternoon, everyone. As sort of intimated at the start, I have the responsibility for delivering repairs and empty homes across the East region. So I just want to touch on a few what I think are key areas, just to talk briefly on. The first being our delivery model. We do deliver 95% of our work through in-house teams now. So we have 14 dedicated staff, all directly employed, who deliver services across the Fenland District Council area. That's a multitude of trades to cover all the key elements. We do use specialist contractor support only on occasions when we've got peaks in demand, or where we've got specialist work, such as scaffolding as an example, and sometimes specialist roofing. We are going through currently changes in our operational management model, which will make us more focused on delivery locally. And whilst the setup at the moment is that our East 5 region and East 6 region cover this area, they cover all of Fenland District Council properties, but they also cover properties for Peterborough and Cambridge and Huntingdon. So sometimes it's difficult to split out direct impact on Fenland. The changes we're about to implement will give an area that is directly responsible for all Fenland District Council properties, so it makes it a lot easier for us to report on it. So that will involve a local neighbourhood repair manager and 2 team leaders managing the 14 operatives. So we're looking at implementing that during the course of this year. I had put down performance as a slide, but I've got a slide after this one to go into a bit more detail. You'll probably be aware, but we cover a whole suite of KPIs, but I've extracted some of the key ones that I think are relevant, and I'll talk through those on the next slide. Empty homes, or voids, as you'll hear them also referred to, they have been a challenge for us, I think it's fair to say, over the last year, particularly in the Fenland area. But I wanted to point out on some of the things that, acknowledging that, what we've actually managed to achieve. So we've put additional investment, external investment, into delivering empty homes within the Fenland area. We've managed to invest £500,000 over the last 12 months, additional to our own internal resource, to help us get some of these numbers down. And we have increased our own staffing numbers, direct numbers, from 8 to 15 within the Fenland area to help manage the empty homes as they become available. We do get quite high churn, or numbers of homes come through in Fenland, and some of those do require significant investment. But just to look at that improvement in the last year, I think this time last year we had about 90 empty homes across Fenland. We're down to 30 this morning, so it's a really high achievement, and we're looking at bringing that down slightly further and managing that as it comes through. I want to touch on LCDM, which is leaks, condensation, damp and mould, but also incorporate a little bit around AWAB's law, which everyone will be aware of as coming to force. So we did establish a bespoke LCDM, or leaks, condensation, damp and mould team, back in 2020, following the tragic death of AWAB Ishak. And that team is still in place with a bespoke, trained operatives who deal with all LCDM or leaks and damp and mould issues. And that's nationally, not just in Fenland, but we have a bespoke team for Fenland too. Every other operative is trained in dealing with mould issues as well, and damp issues as well, and we can use them to supplement in times of busier periods, which we're now coming into that busy period. I think AWAB's law went live a week ago today, so last Monday. Part of our investment in that, which Sue touched on earlier, is we have every single operative nationally has now been trained in how to deal with the impacts of AWAB's law and the sort of things that they need to identify if they're on site doing a normal routine job and they spot something that might be covered by AWAB's law, so everyone knows the process around emergency hazards and significant hazards, how that's reported and how we deal with those. And in addition to that, we've made some changes to our IT system, so all the operatives process their jobs on a tablet. So there are mandatory fields that they now have to complete to say that they've assessed the property in relation to impacts that might come under AWAB's law. All of that is time and date stamped, so because everything, as you'll probably be aware, is timed from the moment we identify any potential issues. Just some of the challenges. Sue's touched on some of the financial challenges, but I think particularly in this area, recruitment continues to be difficult to get the right calibre of person, the right person we need within the area to deliver the service. But on a positive to that, we do have a very low attrition rate. So a lot of the team we have, excuse me, are experienced and have been with us for quite a long period of time now. We do find it difficult sometimes to get good quality subcontractor support as well. We have a whole framework of contractors which cover us nationally as and when needed. They're more reluctant to come out as far as this area and also over to the Norfolk area. So getting the right level of subcontractor is important to us. Customer satisfaction, there is a slide, it's covered on the next slide, but I will say that it's an area that we're all very proud of. In Clarion, the East region as a whole continues to have the highest levels of customer satisfaction, and Fenland often leads the way in that as well. Excuse me. So just on the slides there, I'm going to have to turn around and look at that. I didn't write them down. Thank you. Oh, you've got the slide there. I'll turn that. So in relation to the top one, these are our emergency repairs that we have to attend to. So our SLA for that is to make safe within 24 hours. We have a target of 98%. We're just under that, as you can see from the latest figure. This is year to date, so that's from April to the end, excuse me, the end of August. Sorry, end of September. So although we're under it, that often links to one or two jobs a month, and they're primarily linked to our out-of-hours provider or subcontractor jobs that we put through, particularly around specialist works for drainage. We are working with our subcontractor to ensure that they fully understand how they process these jobs on the portal. Routine repairs, these are our standard repairs that we complete or are required to complete within 28 days. You'll see that that's a lower percentage than we like. Our target for that is 95%, and there is a specific reason. I think there was a question asked around this. There is a specific reason for that, and it's the way we now record our jobs. So there are two KPIs. We'll talk about this first. This includes all jobs. So if, for example, we go out to do a front door repair and that door needs replacing, we'll have to measure it up and order it, and then that can often take 6 weeks to do. That's the same with door glazed units. It's the same with some plastering repairs that are quite extensive, and some roofing repairs. So what we do now is that we record that and we keep that job open until we've fully completed it. How we used to do that, excuse me, previously, I should have brought drinking with me, I do apologise. Yes, please, if that's okay, thank you. So that will keep that job open until it's completed. How we would have recorded that previously is that we would have attended, noted that we needed to order something in, we'd have closed that job down as an inspection and then re-raised another job. So it sort of was okay, but it didn't record the job from report through to end. Thank you very much. And so that's why that figure is particularly low. First time fix is a recording for us. Sorry, just to link into that, the other method we have of recording that is for those routine jobs that we attend, and we record how many the jobs that we managed to attend while it was occupied. So if we turn up to a job, we can't complete it there and then, we keep it open, we still record that we've attended that within 28 days. That's currently at 91%, so it shows the difference between the two. First time fix is really for us on attended bookings. It shows where we have attended and the resident is in. We've completed that work on 91% of times. And the customer satisfaction, we use the Locales app, which I think I spoke about last year, but that's an app that encourages the resident to report back on how satisfied they were with the work that we completed after we've completed the job. It's all done through text. And we record a negative response now. The negative response in Finland is currently 6.39% year to date, so which is the highest nationally at this stage. I've also included there some data around the gas contractor. Well, I don't manage them directly. We do interact quite closely with them. We've got that down as Swale and Gas and Oil, but it's now Shore Serve who deal with that, and you can see the performance that they've got within those particular KPIs, which are similar to ours, but they are working with the contractor to try and look at how they improve those. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'm Adam Cully. I've been at Clarion for 4 years now, and this is year 5 of planned investment in Wisbech and around sustainable homes in general planned investment. Currently, I'll talk to you about what we've got going on in Wisbech on the Waterleys estate. We are currently working on 20 blocks of flats, which affects 80 families with an investment of £3 million. The works there include re-roofing, new fascias and guttering and cladding, and new windows, which we've seen have been really beneficial to our customers. Feedback, so we do pre-feedback through the Leadership Factor, which is an independent organisation. They engage with our customers and do feedback before the work starts. They then do a midpoint conversation, so they will then reach out to our customers and talk to them about midway through the project, how are things going. Then on completion, then they do the same again to find out how they feel at the end of it. And so far, the feedback has been absolutely fantastic, and we're looking to continue on the Waterleys estate next financial year as well. My second slide is around sustainable homes. We've been doing this now for 5 years. I've been with the organisation for 4. We're just investing shy of £2.75 million in Wisbech. So focusing mainly around Wisbech and surrounding villages. They include the likes of Gloucester Court and Waverley Close and the Pigeons at Murrow. What we're doing there is we're doing a mixture depending on the archetype. The EWI, cavity wall insulation, loft insulation, windows and doors, mechanical retractor vents and air source heat pumps. We've always worked with a fabric first approach, so we look at what we can do to retain the heat in the property, and then we include a new heating system if required, which invariably is an air source heat pump. We opt for air source heat pumps because they have coefficients of 3 to 1. So every kilowatt of energy you put into an air source heat pump, that gives you 3 kilowatts of heat output. So that's the most effective non-fossil fuel burning heating system we can put in. That's a whistle stop tour of what we're doing in terms of sustainable homes and component work on this beach.
Hi, I'm Dan Reid. I'm the head of London Partnerships for Clarion Housing Group. It's got a different job title there, but not to worry. First, the good news, we are now on site at Springfield Avenue, where we'll be delivering 40 social rent homes. They're due to complete in June 2026, 28 two-bedroom houses and 12 three-bedroom houses. And these are social rents, so they'll be coming in at circa £20 below the local housing allowance level, which is good for the housing benefit bill, as well as for the residents who will be paying that rent. They'll all be NDSS compliant. They're using air source heat pump technology, and we've had to use enhanced grant rates to deliver these because delivering in the Fenlands is quite a struggle financially. The appraisals don't work very well. I'll go through that now. I'll look at some pictures first though. So these are homes on Springfield. They're looking very good. Has anyone been down for a site visit as yet to have a look round? No? If anyone does want to do that, that's something we can arrange for you to see how homes are progressing there. Our current pipeline, it does continue to we do continue to consider opportunities, both land-led and in Section 106 in the Fenlands. Viability remains an issue with low house values and low local housing allowance rates alongside increased build costs. So it is difficult to build in this location. Contractor failure is also a concern. So we look to work with only tier 1 and tier 2 contractors. We do have higher overheads and build costs. In the last 7 years, we've had 5 contractors go bust on sites we were working on, which adds to the length of the programme. That's not in Fenlands, that's nationwide. That adds to the cost of the programme, having to find a new contractor to build it out, etc. So we try and work with the higher tier contractors to ensure we don't have contractors going bust. The good news is there's a new Homes England programme on the horizon with opportunities for possibly higher grant rates and more flexible use of grant rates, which will improve viability, hopefully. We are expecting an announcement in November from government about how much money is being set aside for the Homes England grant and how much of that we'll be allowed to go for. And we expect to be entering contracts with Homes England on delivery between March and August 2026. In the Fenlands, we do continue discussions with Persimmons, Allerton Homes and Lovell in the area over possible development opportunities. Persimmons in particular, we are about to enter a national set of documents with them, hopefully in the next few weeks. That then sets up a set of contracts that we can then use elsewhere in the country. As you heard, Persimmons have got a large amount of stock to be built in March, and we would hope to be able to work with them on securing some of those units for Section 106 housing. And that's me.
So back to me again. I just thought I'd include a couple of slides about the home link. So I'm sure you know that Clarion manage the housing register on behalf of Fenland. So just a couple of slides to give you a few snapshots of the situation with number of applications, etc. Starting off with the total number of lets in Fenland, this gives you an idea of the kind of through flow. And you'll see from the historical figures coming out of COVID, we saw a bit of a drop in number of lets in the area, just that's because of the challenges Carl alluded to earlier on. We sort of saw a couple of years where fewer properties available, therefore fewer lets. But we are seeing significant improvements in that. So the last couple of years, the numbers are going, and the figures to date, so the top figure on there is actually just year to date, and if we carry on at the trajectory, we'll be looking at well over 400 lets for this year. So we're seeing things to sort of recover from a few years of challenges. And just to get, again, just a bit of a snapshot of average time on the housing register, so you can get a bit of a flavour of how long it's taking from somebody applying according to what banding they're in. And in the main, we're seeing shorter times on the housing register. I'd say that's linked to the increase in number of empty homes available, so which is kind of all positive news. We've also had a few new developments in the locality from Clarion and other landlords, which has meant that the length of time on the wait list is reducing. There is a bit of a spurious figure in there, the one 4 years for Band B for somebody waiting for accommodation. That was just as a result of one particular application that was backdated and linked to somebody who was in the forces, and they had quite a lengthy backdate to their housing application, which has kind of skewed that one particular figure where you can see an asterisk. But if we were to take that out of the mix, you'd see a more kind of common, more likely number in there linked to rehousing for that particular band. I think we've just got Tracy.
Hi, so to recap, I'm Tracy Thompson, and I work in communities. So what you have on the board is a summary of where we are. So this So far this year, we've invested around $250,000 into Finland. And as you can see, this has gone into youth projects, supporting with the cost of living, which is things like food banks, community fridges and so on. Engage with, on average, 432 young people every month. We're supporting 18 organisations, and we're engaging with just under 1,000 people each month on average. We're also supporting 3 wellbeing spaces. A third one is due to open by the end of this month in Chatteris, and the other 2 are at Facts, which is in March, and People and Animals, which is the community farm in Wisbeach. We're also the lead organisation for a large arts council funded bid called Made in Fenland. You might know it as Fenland Place Partnership, and that's going to bring just under $1 million into the area over the next 3 years. And there will be, towards the end of it, quite a large community arts festival. Then we have our second team within Futures, which is Money and Digital. And as you can see, our digital team have loaned out 23 devices so far this year, which is normally laptops, can be mobile phones as well. They've delivered over 40 training hours so that people can get onto IT and the internet, and that's been face-to-face. They've also, through our money support, residents have access to over 20,000, 68 residents. And we've also given out 51 vouchers for food and energy. Including in that, one family have also been assisted to access vouchers where they can get a school uniform for their children. And we work very closely in Cambridgeshire with the local assistance scheme. And then our final team within Futures is Jobs and Training, which does as it says on the tin. So what we've been doing in Finland is delivering functional skills, so maths and English, for young people not in employment, education or training, supporting Finland residents to develop careers in creative industries, and that will feed in with the Made in Finland Arts funded project, and worked with Thomas Clarkson Academy to deliver a dedicated programme of careers provision. As well as that, through volunteering, one youth centre has been redecorated. 16 residents have been supported into work. £30,000 of support has been given out for skills and training. And 65 people have completed certificates in English and maths and construction. That's us.
Sorry, thank you for that. Before I open up this for discussion and questions, this is not a criticism, but we send questions that members of the committee have thought to ask or want to ask as a courtesy. In your future presentations, if you could not answer those questions within the presentation and allow the councillors to actually ask their questions, because then they become more specific, and then if they want to come back on that for further information, then they can do so. So if you would just take that on board, thank you. And councillors, if you feel that your question has only been partially answered, then still go ahead and ask it. Thank you. Right, we'll start off the questions then, please. Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. One was under the slide, Understanding Our Homes. You have on there inactive units, 52. By that, is that empty homes? Meant to be empty homes?
No, so that's just around the way our system captures information. So it's around our stock condition surveys, and they are units that we haven't yet uploaded the information, but we've got the information. So it's just a reporting thing. It's not around empty homes. I think Carl said we've got 30 empty homes in Finland. Did you say?
Yes.
Yeah. So we've got 30 empty homes in Finland at the moment.
You've got 30 empty homes in Finland. How long are they likely to be empty for? Because I noticed you've got waiting lists for practically every type of unit.
Yeah. Carl?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I think I'd just like to re-emphasise the additional investment that we've put into our empty homes programme in Finland. We acknowledge that it's been difficult to maintain the number of properties that are coming through as a void and to bring them back into a lettable position as quickly as we'd like to. As I say, we've improved that by a position of 60 in the last year. We still are getting a high number of voids that come through, but we are returning in the Finland area now around about 12 a week, which is a lot more than we've been able to do previously. We have almost doubled our internal resource available to work bespoke to our void properties. And I expect the number of 30, as it was this morning, to continue to come down over the coming weeks. We'll never clear them all, and we'll never be in a position where we're just waiting for them to come in. But I think the numbers that we've got now are manageable, and it depends on the value of that void. But we do work very closely with Sally and her team to identify which are the ones that they need back quickest and first, because they've got people ready to move into those properties. So I accept the position that we'd like to have it probably maybe 10 lower than it is now, but we're in a much stronger position than we were this time last year.
Thank you for that. Other question about understanding our homes. You've got something on there called cloned surveys. What are cloned surveys?
Yeah, that's in relation to stock condition survey information. So when the surveyor goes out and collates all the information relating to a property, if they're unable to get into a property for whatever reason, and it's similar to one that they've already been into, they will class that as a clone. So, for example, if you've got a row of 10 semi-detached houses that are all of the same era and the same design, and we get into 9 of those, and we record the information, we can't get to the 10th, we'll clone it. So what we'll do is give it exactly the same detail of information as one of those other properties.
Sorry, I've got one further question. Under headlines from communities, you've already touched on part of my question in that you said that the wellbeing space in Chatteris is due to open shortly. Whereabouts in Chatteris is that going to be opening, and what advertising do you do for these type of places? Because I sit on the local council and knew nothing at all about these places.
So the Wellbeing Hub is part of a joint application that we did with People and Animals to the health bid, and we got awarded £38,000. The advertising is within People and Animals. They are working quite closely with Living Sports and some local area charity called Birds and Bees. So they're working with them to open this wellbeing hub. So it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. They want to know what the local community want from this wellbeing hub, and that's why it's taken a little while to get open.
That brings me back to, in that case, wouldn't it have been a good idea if they'd approached the local council for some feedback from them? Like I say, I've been sitting on the local council now for over 10 years and never heard of these places before.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I will take that up with them. Would I be able to have your contact details to pass that on to them, if that's okay? And also, I forgot to mention earlier, the hub will be running from the library. The wellbeing hub will be running from the library.
Thank you for that. The best person to contact would actually be the clerk at Chatteris Council, because she will ensure then all of the town councillors are informed. Thank you.
Councillor Hicks.
Yeah, regarding these inactive units, I understand perfectly. I know, I'm assuming that this is the case, that you get a unit coming back on, and you have to assess it and see if it needs decorating and what needs to be done before you move the new tenant in. That takes time, and then you get that one let, and as soon as you let that one, there's another one come on. So there's always going to be this happening. What would you consider as a good figure for inactive units, and are you achieving that? And are you there yet? I mean, what is the number, and roughly, what is the number you expect to be at any one point?
It's a really good question, and I suppose it depends on the value it costs to bring those properties round. If I'm looking at it personally for Fenland, I think a rolling number of around 20 is reasonable in relation to that. As I say, we're currently at 30 this morning, and we've had significant improvement since this position last year, and more so recently, where we've now managed to employ the additional in-house staff. So we're not quite there at the moment. There's a big increase, I think, nationally, isn't there, at the moment? So I think we're not quite where I would like us to be in an ideal world, but we're not far from it. So I think come the start of the new year, I expect us to be in a position where we're running with around 20.
What exactly are you going to do to get rid of those extra 10 units, and what is in place?
The main issue around that is that we've doubled our internal workforce from this time last year, and we've just finished the last round of recruitment for the last numbers that we've brought in, and we've just brought 4 people in, which brings our total up to 15 now dedicated void operatives in the Fenland area, where we used to run with 8. So that's what's going to make the difference. If I'm sat here this time next year and we haven't, then you can personally take it up with me.
Councillor Willard.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my first question, I've just got a couple. My first question is regarding decarbonisation. I personally have heard so many varying reports regarding the cost, the high cost of both air source and ground source heat pumps, and various rumours about their lack of efficiency and output. To that extent, are Clarion satisfied that the cost of air source heat pumps is justified against the savings on fuel and the efficiency of the equipment?
Yes, absolutely we are. We're moving away from fossil fuel burning appliances, and air source is a good option to use. I'd take your point that are they efficient if we don't do any other measures for the property? Then you're absolutely right, there may be a struggle there, but our approach has always been fabric first. So we don't just do the air source heat pump installation, we do a cavity wall installation upgrade, loft installation upgrade, new windows, new doors, and external wall installation if it's needed. So we know with those additional measures that we're getting the absolute best out of our heating systems. As I alluded to earlier, the coefficient is 3 to 1. So every kilowatt of power we put into the unit, we're getting 3 kilowatts of heat out the other end. So absolutely, we're doing the best we can for our customers and not putting them into a fuel property.
And just on the new build, it's the same where we go for EPC-B rating, which is one of the highest ratings you can get on a house. So it's the air source heat pump, but we do other measures as well to make sure that it's enhanced to a high level. With new residents, there's a certain amount of education required to get them to understand how an air source heat pump works, because it's not an instant heat solution like a gas-fired radiator is. You need to sort of leave it at a constant lower heat throughout the day to get the heat you require. But we do training sessions for the residents and for the housing management teams as well, so they understand how the process works.
Thank you very much, very enlightening. And my second question basically is on the objectives on page 21 of our agenda, your presentation. What is the current situation and the real position against the 3 objectives that you've set out there? How are they being met, and what is being undertaken to achieve these objectives?
So yeah, over that particular period, yes, we saw a reduction in reports of antisocial behaviour. I mean, the police reported to us they saw for a particular period 8% drop in reports, and we were also seeing increased with customer satisfaction in our sort of local just spot checks with customers. They were sort of feeling a lot safer. So for that particular period, that it was certainly impactful. As I said in the presentation, I don't believe it's the end of the journey when it comes to sort of tackling antisocial behaviour. It's going to be an ongoing challenge, but we've seen significant improvements, and I think that's down to that really close partnership working across the agencies. I mean, things like making sure we're choosing the right tool to deal with the right problem at the right time, doing things like, really being raising awareness of how tenants can report things to us, because I think we find sometimes tenants are more likely to report things to us to the police, so kind of raising that, but also putting in other measures like additional CCTV and lighting has helped in that piece of work. And it's been quite an intensive piece of work and continues to be an intensive piece of work, so it's by no means at the end of the story there. But we feel like we've got a really good framework in place.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to leave that, but just one slight follow-up, because that leads really straight on to the next question. And you do mention that this work is going to continue. So I'm assuming, therefore, that you do have plans to expand this sort of schemes across Fenland rather than isolated within the area that you've currently operated in.
So I think the nature of antisocial behaviour is that you probably have to consider a local bespoke solution to the challenges in a particular area. The unique situation we've got in Wisbech is a higher concentration of clarion stock in a fairly localised area. So that means we've already got quite a significant amount of resources there. I think what it has done is given us quite a handy kind of set of toolkits to apply, but I think it would have the actual approach would shift depending on where the challenges are. It certainly has helped improve what were already good relations with the local agencies, so that will, we hope, be impactful in other areas as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation, which was slightly different to the first one that we received, which in fact has answered a couple of my questions, certainly explaining the percentages thing. I have got a couple of new questions, however. On your action plan, you talked about environmental improvements. Are you aware of the amount of rubbish that's being dumped continually at the back of the Salvation Army in Wisbech, which I think comes from the West Street flats?
So we've got a community warden who's out and about on a regular basis checking for things like fly tipping, and also we've got part of this piece of work, we've got presence on the site from our neighbourhood team. So we are closely monitoring it, and where we become aware of things, we'll try and get out there pretty quickly. And there are certain locations where we know are a little bit more susceptible. We have got some CCTV in place now around Onyx Court, which hopefully is going to help to reduce things like fly tipping in the area.
Okay, thank you. Another question I've got is in Newton. Recently, you've put 2 houses up for sale, which were Clarion houses, and I'm wondering why they aren't being improved rather than being up for sale. And also, when you put things up for sale, houses or flats up for sale, do you then add those 2 into your next lot of rebuilding new houses?
So the 2 properties in Newton, it was because of the cost it would take to bring them up to an acceptable standard, that we as an organisation are happy to let our properties at. And it is a balancing act. I think I touched on it in the presentation, that we want to retain our stock, but equally what we also want to do is get best value for money. So if we can use that money for something else and actually that delivers overall something more, then we will make those really tough decisions. But yes, as part of the transfer agreement, there is a commitment that when we sell our stock, that we then reinvest that into new builds. So a lot of the previous sale has gone into Springfield that Dan spoke about. Once we get to a point that has funded, then we will be capturing any future sales, and that will be offset against any new development. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Boyce-Baird.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Under the headlines from communities, it's lovely to read that you're working with 18 organisations. I was just wondering, is there a list of the organisations which is available to the public, also with their projects and locations, and do these organisations submit an evaluation piece with an impact report after the work's complete?
So in answer to the question about the different things that are going on in the Felland area, I have sent an email out to the organisations asking them of a breakdown of everything that they are delivering that is linked to Clarion funding, and I'm waiting on 12 more of those to come back to me.
Lovely, thank you. Will that be accessible to the public to see, once you've got that information, will that be available to the public to see as well?
So each of the organisations that we support, they all do their own advertising, whether it's social media, actually it's mostly social media that they're doing through Facebook, Instagram, and some of them have actually, the youth organisations are going down the TikTok route as well. So they are advertising within their organisations. It's part Clarion funding, so not wholly Clarion funding. So it's difficult to pinpoint, and some of them, they get strategic support from us, which then will impact the things that they can deliver. So what I've asked for them is to bring everything that they do together, and then I can give you a list, or but they do their own advertising.
Okay, lovely, thank you. I've got another question regarding the Fenland project work. How are these plans going, and are they on schedule?
Yes, So we employ the service of Equans in the region, which are a tier 1 contractor. The works are going well, and they are on schedule to complete by the end of the financial year. Like most construction industries, we do have our challenges of recruiting labour into the area, but they have a supply chain in place, so we're quite confident we will be where we need to be at the end of the financial year.
Lovely, thank you. I've got another question. Is there any data on accessibility adaptations, adjustments requested, and any data around Clarion's response or their assessment time, for example, making things more accessible, handrails, ramps, that sort of thing? There was some interesting data, but there wasn't anything around making the homes accessible.
I mean, sure, we don't have the data with us. I think we do have a specialist aids and adaptations team who coordinate all of those, and they certainly involve Cole's team as well. So some works are done in-house through our own funding, and then the larger works are actually through DFG, which we do provide parcel funding to as well. So I don't have anything to hand, but certainly we have a current vulnerability and accessibility strategy as well that is looking not just around accessibility in the home, but outside of the home, how people access our service. So we interpret accessibility, I suppose, as quite a broad term. Are you talking specifically about aids and adaptations in the home?
Anything really, but yeah, anything. Specifically that, I guess, yeah.
Okay, I mean, we can try and get some of that data for you. And as I say, that second strand, as far as we're concerned, is about how people access our services rather than, the provision that we make. And that's an ongoing piece of work. We're very much collating data at the moment about what people's needs are, because we've got a lot of data, but we realise that some of that has become out of date. So there is a big project at the moment ongoing to make sure that what we hold on our customers is actually right, so we can tailor our services. So if somebody, for example, is visually impaired, our system will know not to send them a letter, or to send them a letter in large print, for example. So but we can look to see what A&A data we've got for you. I think we do struggle to get historical data from our systems, but we should have what we're doing now and have done recently.
Lovely, thank you. You mentioned about access and services. We have quite a high digital exclusion areas. Many residents don't use the digital world. A few residents don't have very high literacy levels. So any information that you've got would be appreciated. But yeah, that would be really interesting to know. Thank you. I am. I've got one. One more. Sorry, because you have answered quite a few in the presentation. So measuring the success at your slide. How does this measure against last year and the year before that? Was this an isolated area of concern? I know you've mentioned Whiz Beach, but I'm just clarifying. Was this just the Whiz Beach area? Thank you.
Yes, it was. Yeah, we've as I say, about half of our stock is in Whiz Beach, and that's where we were seeing the high levels of antisocial behaviour. So yes, the particular project that we had was exclusively in Whiz Beach.
Thank you. And just to clarify, I believe you said that it's an increase on last year. Was that?
So that yes, across all of Fenland, we've seen higher levels, more reports of antisocial behaviour. But that, as I say, that's not exclusive to Fenland. We've seen that across all our stock across the UK. So it's similar higher levels, and similarly, we normally see a drop off in the autumn. We've not seen that this year, which is quite unusual. We've kind of got several years of data which show a similar pattern. But we've got more resources in the team to tackle that. So we've got more. Increased number of what we call tenancy specialists, and their role is to manage complaints of antisocial behaviour. So hopefully we've got a robust response to that.
Lovely, thank you. That is it.
Thank you. It was me that was interested in AWAB's law, and you did cover that quite extensively. But I'm not sure if I missed it. But has it now rolled out beyond the pilot scheme?
I suppose there's two parts to it. Excuse me, two parts to it. The LCDM team that we brought in 2020 was as a direct result of what happened to AWAB Ishak, but that wasn't a mandatory requirement to do that. That's something that we did as an organisation because we wanted to ensure that we were providing our residents with the best service possible. AWAB's law is different, and it went live a week ago today. And AWAB's law is that what we're working on now, where we've trained every single operative into understanding what that means for us as an organisation and what that means for our residents in being able to provide them with the service that's due, and what the different categories are within AWAB's law and how we manage against those. So it's because we're only a week into it, it's very raw, I suppose, for the operatives, and they're certainly asking lots of questions, and we're getting to work our way through it. We've got decision trees that they can refer to that help guide them along the route that they have to take. But the key issue and the most important issue for us is making sure that if we identify an issue while we're in one of those properties, and it's not just for our operatives or engineers out on site, it's for Sally's team and Sue's team when they're out as well, about the process they have to follow and how we record the date of that, because that's important. There are strict timelines that we must adhere to. So, for example, if it comes under an emergency hazard, which might include severe mould within a bedroom and the resident has breathing difficulties or there's young children, that would constitute an emergency hazard, and we have to make that safe within 24 hours. If we can't make it safe within 24 hours, we have to look at a temporary move for that resident to support them. And then we have, underneath that, we have significant risks which still have to be dealt with, but time scales are not quite so severe, shall we say. So yes, and we've adjusted all our IT systems to ensure that every repair we go to, there's a record there about whether it was linked to the categories of AWAB's law, whether it was a routine, just a normal routine repair, whether they've spotted anything whilst they're there that the tenant perhaps hasn't reported. So it is, as I say, it is quite new for us, and we're working through it, but everyone's been trained, and we've got continuing support groups to help the operatives in determining that, and we have the IT systems in place to support and record that data.
And that's across the whole of the Clarion stock. If everyone's okay, I've just been asked by a couple of people if we could have a 5-minute break. Thank you. Thank you. Item 6 is the Leader and Chief Executive's annual update to include local government reform. You're all seated at the table. Thanks for all attending, and when you're ready, if you'd like to start your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. I'm not going to give a lengthy presentation. We've given quite a short presentation in writing to you all, and I think that it's important to give as much time as possible for questions and for follow-up questions as well. I think there are a lot of things to question, and I've got quite a lot of answers to give, so I'm more than happy we get on with the business. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Questions then, please. I've not gone fully down the page here. So before we move into discussion, members are reminded that there will be a full debate and vote on Fenton District Council's local government reorganisation submission at this week's meeting of full council. Any panel member wishing to participate in that debate and decision making must remain sufficiently open-minded. Today's meeting is an opportunity for us to ask questions and to undertake our ordinary scrutiny functions. With that in mind, this item is now open for discussion. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Councillor Willard.
Thank you. I'll make it quick. So I've just got a couple of questions, if I may. And my first question is regarding the budget comments that you've made under finance. And you've said out there that although the budget was originally balanced, that you are currently suggesting a possible deficit of 1.4 million if interventions are not met. And also following that, projected deficits of 2.2 million for 2026 and rising in subsequent years. I'd just like some reassurance that we are continuing to be a prudent council and that we will expect to be budgeting wherever possible, but no losses and no deficits. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Andrew, for that question. It's a question which, changing some of the numbers, could have been asked at any time in the last 10, 15, 20 years. Because if you look at the medium-term financial strategy, if you go back to previous years, you'll see that all the time there are these projections showing that there will be a budget deficit in future years and that budget deficit is going to increase. And that is because of the assumptions which are made in producing the medium-term financial strategy. I'm not saying those assumptions are wrong. What's important is those assumptions are consistent. And those assumptions are actually laid out every year in the budget papers which are produced each time a new budget is discussed. And I think the very key words that you said were that these shortfalls were if there are no interventions. And of course there will be interventions. There'll be interventions in a number of ways. There'll be interventions which will reduce expenditure. There will be interventions which increase the income that we have. There will also be interventions when we look at the interrelationship between the council's revenue account and the reserves that we have. The one reserve which I'll particularly point out is the Budget Equalisation Reserve. That Budget Equalisation Reserve was set up some 6 years ago, and the purpose of it was to allow for the fluctuations which exist, which always have existed, between what we budget for at the beginning or before the beginning of a financial year and what the final outturn is, what the actual results have been by the end of that financial year. And the Budget Equalisation Reserve was set up so that where we made in-year savings, then those savings, rather than just being lost somewhere, would be put to one side to meet those years where we weren't able to meet the budget. I'm pleased to say that in all but one of the years so far since the Budget Equalisation Reserve has been set up, we managed to put more money into the Budget Equalisation Reserve. To the extent that, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, and I'm sure that someone will, the Section 151 officer will correct me if I'm wrong,
we now stand at about 1.7 million, about 1.7 million that we have in the budget equalisation reserve. These are monies which have net. These are monies net which have been budgeted for in various budgets, but effectively haven't been spent. It's more complicated than that, of course. But this is a sign that all the way through the year, and not just when we're coming up towards a budget, we work really hard to ensure that we work as efficiently and effectively as possible. And I use the word we, but I have to say that all of the hard work is done by the officers, and it's led from the chief executive down in the way in which we approach the spending of public money. And that's from individual projects where it's necessary to get tight control over what's happening, through to options which open up during the course of the year, through to accounting things such as ensuring that in the last couple of months of a financial year, in February and March, no one is tempted to spend money because it happens to be in their budget and they want to protect their budget. And we make sure that if there is a shortfall on spending, that feeds back into the system rather than be spent less necessarily than should be the case. So that process continues and will continue. However, we face an unusual situation coming up. We have a budget coming up for 2026-27 where legally we don't actually know for sure that local government reorganisation is going ahead. And that means that being prudent, and I'm pleased, Andrew, you used the word prudent when you asked the question, being prudent, we can't assume that the council will cease to exist on the 31st of March 2028. We do believe that's likely to be the case. We certainly believe it's the government's current intention to do that, but it may not happen. And if it doesn't, we can't find ourselves in a position where we have made financial decisions on the assumption that local government reorganisation will take place, and then it doesn't. So 2026-27 will be much more difficult a budget than 2027-28, even though the projected deficit at the moment is smaller in 2026-27, because we must not make the assumption that local government reorganisation will go ahead and the council will cease to exist on the 31st of March 2028. I've had regular meetings with senior members of staff on the finance side, very cooperative meetings, I have to say, very interesting meetings, and we have identified a good number of opportunities which exist so that we can ensure that the prudence which you mentioned, Andrew, continues to be shown by Finland, either until the 31st of March 2028 or into the indefinite future, depending upon what happens with local government reorganisation.
Thank you. That's very reassuring for the future. And my second question, which is very close to heart one really, because being a March Town Councillor as well, and that's regarding under the Finland Inspire programme of the various projects that you've listed there. And one is March Country Park. And the project mentioned there is confirmation of the land transfer agreement only. I just wondered whether you could possibly clarify what is actually meant by that.
Thank you. I need on this one to be slightly careful to avoid any infringement of commercial confidentiality. So you'll pardon me if I don't give any numbers in this. The project was split into two phases because of the potential impact of local government reorganisation, phase 1 and phase 2. And phase 1 was first of all to identify land ownership and then to agree the terms of the land transfer to Fenland District Council. Phase 2 will see the detailed design and delivery of the project. So work has been done by officers and by lead members to confirm ownership and to have discussions with the owners. But I have to say that up to date, no agreement has been reached which are on terms which are acceptable to both parties. So this work continues with officers who are currently preparing an update project briefing paper for the lead members, which I'm expecting to get very, very shortly indeed. I don't want to go into details of the negotiations, if you don't mind. It would not be helpful to FDC to do so.
Thank you. That does clarify it.
Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back a bit to Finland Inspire, going on what you've just said about the unsureness of whether LGI is going ahead or not, I keep being asked by various residents about all these wonderful schemes we've got in the pipeline. When are they going to happen? Have any actually been started? And are they being on hold because we're not sure what's going to happen?
Thank you very much indeed. We did start Fenland Inspire, Brenda, as you know, some time ago, and it was in June that the Cabinet reviewed that programme. And what we did was to separate out 11 of the projects which would progress currently, with the remaining projects awaiting clarity of the intention of central government. If we were to progress all of the projects which are in the very lengthy Fenland Inspire list at the moment, then I would have Councillor Woolard telling me that we are not being prudent, and he would be correct, we wouldn't be being prudent. We've chosen 11 subject matters, 11 particular projects, either because they were already underway or because their cost was such that it was able to definitely to be achieved by us regardless of local government reorganisation. We also have the problem that we have limited officer resource, so we couldn't proceed with all of the projects immediately. We needed to prioritise them, and we did prioritise 11. And those 11 are continuing to move forwards. They are not dependent upon local government reorganisation, and it won't come as a surprise to you that the termination date, the times by which they will be completed, will differ from one project to the next. And I'm happy to the best of my knowledge, to be able to answer anything about any individual project that you may wish to raise of those 11. Having said all of that, we continue to be very fluid and flexible in our approach to all of this. And when opportunities arise, and again, I don't want to go into detail because this hasn't yet been formally agreed, and I'm hoping that the Cabinet will move this forward on Friday. When opportunities do arise, we will move things forward in the process when external funding appears to become available to us. So the one thing which I am concerned about, and people may think March 2028 is a long time away, my great concern is the very limited amount of time we have before FDC is scheduled no longer to exist. And as far as I'm concerned, the urgency of this process really hasn't been felt by members yet. Now, I say that having put certain matters back into the second phase once we know that central government is going to go ahead with local government reorganisation, but time is actually against us on this. So it will be something which I will mention time and time again in the future as far as this is concerned, and I can assure you that I am very keen indeed to see these 11 projects completed on schedule and preferably under budget if it's all possible, so that we can then turn our attention to the other items which are in the Fenland Inspire project. But I'm more than happy to answer any questions which I'm able to answer on any of the items concerned.
I'm just wondering whether it's not worth putting out some kind of press release or something just to say these are the ones we've already started, because people don't seem to realise some have already started, and I think that would, it would be good for people to know.
Thank you. I think that you're asking that question, my answering it today will be helpful in getting that message out. I'm guilty of quite a lot of failings, one way and another. And one of them is I'm not a great one for using the council for self-publicity for the council. I've seen some councils which do nothing but put out good news stories about the council to the extent that members of the public don't believe a single word which comes out of those councils. So I'm reluctant to be over exuberant about what we've achieved and what we're going to be achieving. But having said all of that, I think that we should look for an opportunity, Brenda, to do exactly what it is that you're suggesting. So I'll speak to the Chief Executive about that at some stage and look to see what opportunity we've got to give what you've effectively called a progress report and also a success to date report.
Thank you. Councillor Boyce-Baird.
Thank you. With regards to the Fenland Future Limited projects at Neem Waterfront, Wiz Beach and the Elms Chatteras, can further details and dates for delivery be provided, please?
Right. Now, let me first of all, thank you very much indeed for the question. Very important, very big numbers involved in this. The first thing to say is that we have deliberately, and I'll probably go into some detail about why, we've deliberately set up a separate limited company, Fenland Future Limited, which is dealing with the development of these two sites. Legally, that means that a lot of the decisions which are made are not being made now by Fenland District Council, they're not being made by officers here in their capacity as officers of FTC, not being made by members or by me or by members of the Cabinet. They are and have to be made by the directors of the company. The fact that those individuals also happen to be officers of the council it's actually a complicating factor because they have a legal liability to the company when they're acting in this respect, not to the council. And we've been very careful indeed to ensure that that legal distinction has been followed at all times. So we don't direct the directors, we don't direct FFL to do things, but we do have conversations. And we're fortunate that, well, not fortunate, we've done it deliberately, but we set this up and the directors have agreed to continue, that when directors' meetings are taking place, that Maureen, as the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I are allowed to observe what is going on. Just occasionally, those observations end up being slightly verbal on my part in particular, not necessarily so much on Maureen's part, because Maureen is more reserved. But just occasionally, those observations end up being us giving our opinion about various things or asking various questions or challenging. But I'll emphasize the decisions which have to be made by the company are made by the directors and are not made by me and certainly not made by Maureen. And that's the way legally it needs to be. And there's a reason for all of this, and that, there have been a number of reasons, but one of the reasons is that for the council itself to have done all of this would, in a whole host of ways, in terms of tax, in terms of accounting, in terms of accountability, have been really difficult, because you may well have noticed, Lucy, that councils don't often move very quickly when it comes to making decisions. And to the extent that it's possible, we don't want insufferable delays in the projects that we've got in front of us. So we wanted to reduce delays by as much as we could. Now that's not easy when you take into account the fact that these two sites, they were available for development because they're difficult. The site in Chatteris has all sorts of issues to do with water, which I won't go into in enormous detail, but it's certainly limiting in terms of what can be done with that site, as well as in terms of access for vehicles. And the site in Wisbech had a significant number of issues associated with it. In location terms, I think it's an excellent site, but in terms of development, there had been all sorts of issues which had caused valuations at one point of that site, before certain remediation took place, actually to be negative. So we find ourselves in a position where we've set up FFL to do this on our behalf. However, FFL is not set up to be a profit-making organisation. We don't need a developer's profit out of what is happening in Fenland, in Wisbech, or in Chatteris. What we have attempted to do, I've described it before as being a bit like what the alchemists used to try and do in the early Middle Ages. We're trying to turn lead into gold. And the lead is a capital profit, and the gold is a revenue advantage to FTC. And as you will see from the numbers, well, it's in the next agenda item, my apologies. I'm in danger of straying into the next agenda item. But we have already managed to get some over £800,000 of advantage to FTC out of this, over 600,000 of which is on the revenue side. So there have been reasons why we've been doing it the way we have. But with all development, there are difficulties, and with these two sites, which are difficult sites in themselves, there have been particular difficulties getting through all of the processes, including getting through planning. Now, you might say, why should there be any difficulty getting through planning? If it's FFL putting it forward, which is owned by the council, surely the council's planning committee will just pass anything that is asked of it. And that, of course, is not the way. The planning committee has to examine these applications which come in as carefully and on the same grounds as they do for any other application which came in. And if we were to do it in any other way, I think one or two of us might find ourselves answering a few questions at the local constabulary because we'd be acting entirely illegally. So we've gone through that process. We've got outline planning permission for both. We've got reserved matters coming up, I think, for both applications, one of which may be slightly slightly earlier than the other, but they are on the way. Then we have the issue of what is the financial control for this in total and the timescales of it. And we always knew that it would take some time. In the Wisbech case, only one of the 5 plots has been firmly allocated. The other 4, well, there are some negotiations going on at the moment, and I don't want to talk about that. But we knew that only one of the 5 plots would be moving forward quickly and the other 4 would be later. And we also knew that any scheme for the Chatteris site, it was going to take time, as all sites do when they're being sold. And not every single one of the houses would be sold on day one, and not every single one of the houses will be built on day one. It would be a gradual process which takes a lot longer than anyone would actually like to take. So we knew all of that. What has changed, again, I'm giving the same answer every time, is local government reorganisation and what we now face with that. And there's a requirement, in the way in which you set this up, that a business plan be published for FFL by the 31st of January 2026. And between now and then, we'll be giving consideration to, and I use those words very carefully indeed, no decisions have been made at all, no numbers have been put down on paper, but we'll give careful consideration to the effects of LGR on the 2 sites that we've got and on FFL as a whole. And we will be looking for recommendations to be made based on the evidence when we start looking at the numbers in conjunction with LGR to work out what is best for Fenland District Council and for the people of Fenland. So I can't give an answer to that. So I can't specifically answer your question because a fundamental review is taking place now and will take place up to January, and a new business plan must be in place by the end of January, which will reflect what we consider to be the implications of LGR and what is the best way to move forwards for FDC. And I'm not telling you how that is going to happen because I don't know. We're actually doing a real review, an honest review of the options which are open to us, and we will put forward the best one we can, and that will have to be put forward by the end of January. So apologies I went on a little bit, Chairman, but I thought it would be of interest.
No, that's fine. It's good to have these type of questions answered. I don't think anybody else has got any questions, but I've got a few. So my first question goes back to how realistic are the commercial projections given the national economic uncertainty? And I know I'm asking you to answer an almost impossible question, but your views would be welcome.
Thank you, Maureen. It's not an impossible question in our particular case because our commercial property income, the commercial projections that we've got, and I take it we're talking about that rather than things such as the port and whatever, that it's holding up very well indeed. And at the moment, there is absolutely no need for mitigation to be made. And as far as we're aware, there isn't going to be the prospect of any mitigation. Now, one can never tell with any tenant what may happen in the future, but as far as I'm aware, absolutely no problem.
Wow. Right. What's the risk of partial delivery on the Fenland Inspire projects if we were to lose external funding, like, for example, the Football Foundation?
Thank you. I worked on the assumption when originally putting forward the concept of Fenland Inspire with all the contributions that were made from councillors about what should be included within it. I worked on the assumption that we would receive no external funding to support all of that. I also worked on the assumption that we would try our damnedest to get as much external funding as we possibly could to be able to support it, because it obviously makes it easier to do so. But I'll go back to that first statement. If there were no external funding, the proposal would still go ahead. Some external funding, when it becomes available, and external funding sometimes becomes available unexpectedly. You don't get notice of it, it just happens. It's always been like that, I'm sorry to say. But some external funding actually means that we can bring things forward, which otherwise I might have suggested needed to be kept further back. So external funding can actually assist us in terms of delivery timetable. And also, what's really important is by delivery timetable coming forward, it helps us with that commodity which we are going to be most short of, which isn't money, which isn't officer time, which isn't the will of the councillors, it's time itself. And we've got very little time before 31st of March 2028 to get all of these projects not merely off the ground, but far enough towards completion that they're going to be completed. It's a very ambitious programme, so the more we can bring things forward as a result of external funding, allowing us prudently, to come back to Andrew's word, to make these decisions and to bring the spend forward, the better it will be.
Thank you. Beyond financial savings, what evidence shows that the transformation programme's improved customer satisfaction and service quality?
Oh, I'm sorry that Councillor Booth isn't with us today, because really the evidence lies with the performance indicators that we have and also with the customer satisfaction levels which are shown. Nothing is perfect, and there's always room for improvement, but despite the financial savings, we have not had any significant reduction in the satisfaction that residents have got in the services that we provide. Now, there are individual cases where we've made decisions which some individuals have not liked, but as far as our performance indicators are concerned, and as far as our overall customer satisfaction is concerned, we've held up remarkably well. And again, the praise for that has to go to the officers from Paul Ned down, the amount of work that they put in, most of which behind the scenes is not seen by members at all. And a lot of hard work is done by officers to ensure that we continue to have high levels of customer satisfaction and that our performance indicators continue to be satisfactory.
Transformation. Whilst we've been bold and ambitious around transformation, I think it's fair to say we've been pragmatic in what we've done as well. So an example of that, I think officers have pushed quite hard on certain things, and I think quite rightly members have pushed back and challenged that. So Smart Tech would have been an example, because I think it's important that, you know, whilst we do look to exploit the opportunities that exist and are really important where transformation is concerned, it's imperative that we have political buy-in. I mean, fundamentally, things aren't going to progress unless we do. And I think members have a good grasp on what's going on within their communities. And I think to step too far too quickly can sometimes leave residents, customers behind. So it's a little anecdotal what I'm saying, but if you do try and jump too far too quickly, that can have an adverse impact on customer satisfaction. So I think to sort of back up the points that Councillor Bowden has made, we have been bold, we have been ambitious, we've done a lot of work where transformation is concerned, and I think clearly that underpins the high level of customer satisfaction that we've been able to retain, but we've been pragmatic and sensible in the transformation programme that we've sought to pursue.
Thank you. Are the savings from TA1 and TA2 sustainable, or are they one-off efficiencies that will erode over time?
The transformation agenda isn't just about saving money, but it is largely about greater efficiency, greater cost effectiveness. And some of the changes which there were in TA1 and TA2 were one-off changes, got a one-off advantage, and that was it. Other changes were more fundamental and which reduced the amount of spend we had for a particular aspect of the council's work, and that was then fed into the base budget for future years. So those ones are sustainable. The one-off ones are, by very definition, one-off. And the idea behind the Transformation Agenda 1 and 2, and the reason that we will not be seeing TA3, as I had been expecting to bring forward, is that by examining the work that the council does and examining the outcomes that we want, we can very often manage to make savings, to increase efficiency by reorganising the way in which we do things. But that it's almost always there is a one-off cost to do that, but then you have persistent, continuous savings year on year. So there's a payback period for the work which is done. And we continue to benefit both on TA1 and TA2 from that payback period and the reduced cost that there is for things which previously we did at greater net cost. Unfortunately, well, at a stage, and yet again I'm answering this and have to come to local government reorganisation, but with local government reorganisation, we don't get those long-term benefits. We can make a change in the way in which Fenland District Council performs a particular service, and those savings will cease on the 31st of March 2028. So we no longer have that payback period where we can say, yes, it's worth making the initial cost, the expense, the time to make a change, because we know in the longer term, FDC and the residents of Fenland will benefit from it. LGR takes that away from us. So that's why there is no TA3 on the horizon, which I expected to bring before the council. And it's also why that the sustainability of the savings which have been made in TA1 and TA2 is not guaranteed to last beyond 31st of March 2028. And in fact, in principle, the reorganisation which will take place will incur a significant amount of extra cost as reorganisation tries to bring 2, 3, 4 different councils, 5 different councils maybe, into one, and somehow manage to get a single council which is going to have some degree of control over all of the costs that it has. Everyone appreciates there's going to be a very large amount of disruption and cost involved in that reorganisation. So unfortunately, the sustainability of TA1 and TA2, which was the question you asked, basically largely stops on the 31st of March 2028 if government goes ahead with what it's proposing on the current timescale.
Yes, Paul.
So, yeah. It's absolutely correct in what he says. I think whilst Fenland District Council is in existence, a practical example of a sustainable, cashable saving is where we've used transformation to change the way in which we work. A really good example of that exists within our My Fenland customer service team. So by creating more generic roles, we've been able to restructure, reconfigure the team in that sense, and that has enabled us to bank cashable savings, which are sustainable whilst Fenland District Council is in existence, and that's made a significant contribution towards managing, and it goes back to the previous discussion around prudency and the council's budget and medium-term financial position and how we've managed our deficit. That isn't the sole contributing factor, but it's played a big part in making sure that as a council we've retained such a robust financial position.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that question, Maureen. It's always actually been extremely difficult for any council to use its consulting role in order to achieve those objectives. But that doesn't mean to say we don't. In fact, all councils don't try to do so. There is a limited amount of effect that we can have when it comes to the private sector investment which takes place within Fenland. And we have to accept that our role, so far as that is concerned, is absolutely minor compared with the financial returns required by the private sector organisations concerned. But increasingly, we're talking about our consulting role, increasingly we're finding that government money is being channeled via the combined authority to our area. And it's there where the consulting role, where the interaction between our officers and other officers within Cambridgeshire and Peterborough and with the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority officers, it's there that we can manage to have the greatest amount of effect to ensure that we receive at least our fair share of the amount of money which is made available by central government on a whole host of different areas, some of which are really important to us and where we have a real need. The area where I believe we still have a lot further to go, and it's one which I continue to argue for, is on the skills side, where we are recognised nationally as being one of the least skilled areas in the country so far as local authority areas are concerned. And it is vital that more resource is put in to allow both young adults coming into the labour market to obtain useful, economically viable skills, but also for adults to be able to reskill and to improve their skills so that it's going to be possible for them to get more remunerative work and to be able to meet the challenges that we've got coming ahead in the economy over the next decade or more. And that's a good example of where we have been working hard, and we need to work harder and we need to achieve more, where with the advantages that we need to get to be able to enhance jobs in this area, those advantages really need to come forward through those very, how to describe them, those consulting roles that we have with regard to that type of expenditure and that type of grant coming from central government.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just
Thank you for that. Councillor Hay and myself are due to attend a combined authority meeting for the overview and scrutiny panel there, and skills is actually on the next agenda. So to have that report today, that's quite useful. Thank you. I think that concludes our questions. So, oh, sorry, didn't see you.
Councillor Bowden, I know this is a slightly left field question, but it has got a relevance towards this report. Are Fenland in a position at the moment where we're having a problem of sort of the staff here leaving because they're not got a job in 2 or 3 years' time? Is that the case? Because obviously that has an effect on this report. And also the second part of that question is, are you also having trouble recruiting new staff because they know they could potentially be without a job in 2 years' time?
Thank you. This issue was highlighted almost as soon as government, back in December last year, made its announcement that local government reform was going to go ahead in the way in which it's going to go ahead and with the timetable which we believe it's going to go ahead on. And I've been pleasantly surprised that I haven't seen any sign at this time of a leakage of staff, particularly our best staff, from our council to others. I'm not going to comment on recruitment because that really is down to the chief executive, and in fact all staff matters are down to the chief executive. But your question is precisely the one which occurred right across the local government sector in county council, upper tier authorities and lower tier authorities, which were facing abolition in 2027 or 2028. I can't speak on behalf of other authorities, but I can say that I haven't yet seen what had been feared as far as Finland is concerned. Having said all of that, responsibility for staffing matters is down to the chief executive, and it's appropriate for him to answer, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. There's no need for me to contradict what the leader said. It's absolutely spot on. So it is a very real issue. It has been ever since the government's white paper dropped back in December of last year. It will continue to be until the ongoing uncertainties associated with LGR are finally resolved one way or another. But the leader is correct in what he says. At the moment, we haven't seen any significant exodus in terms of turnover at all relating to LGR. That could change. It's a very sort of movable position, and obviously staff will sort of assess their best interests. What I can say is that we're spending a lot of time reaching out and communicating and engaging with staff to try and give them as much certainty as possible, but being honest with them that at the moment in time there's certain questions that we just can't respond to, i.e. what will their jobs look like at the point in time a new councils are created. But we're doing a lot of work to try and alleviate some of the uncertainties and anxieties that exist. In terms of recruitment, we haven't had to do a whole lot of recruitment. Thankfully, we've got a pretty stable workforce. But where we have had vacancies, mostly we've been able to fill them. There are certain jobs, and this isn't unique to Finland, it's across the local government sector, that traditionally are difficult to recruit to. Again, Councillor Davis will be familiar with this, we've had this conversation before, because there just is a kind of national skills shortage. I think one of the reasons, perhaps, that we haven't experienced some of the challenges that maybe other councils have got, both in terms of recruitment and retention on the back of the government's white paper announcement, is, we work really hard to develop the right kind of culture here, a culture that staff can really kind of buy into, where they feel supported, where they have an environment that they can innovate, thrive, where they understand culturally the importance of the interface between officers and members. And I think that really has helped, and this hasn't come about as a consequence of the government's announcement of LGR. It's something that we've committed to many, many years ago, but because it's so kind of baked in, it's so embedded, it's something that enables us to help retain our talent. And because we have a good reputation across the whole of local government, it's something that stands in our favour when we try and recruit in what is often a very competitive jobs marketplace. So, yeah, at this moment in time, no significant issue, but as I say, it's a very sort of movable situation that might change as the realities of LGR start becoming, more near term.
Yeah, I can see this in a lot of people's minds. It's a long way away, but in reality, it's not that far away, as you've well said. And I can see this accelerating this thing as you get towards the end. And then by the time we get to this situation where it has to be handed over, there's probably going to be hardly anybody here to administer it. It's going to be like an empty ship.
That's a burden.
I just think I need to correct that one suggestion that was being made by Paul there. We are not going to be in a position where hardly anyone is left. Don't forget that the functions of local government will need to be continuing on the 1st of April 2028, just as they have been continuing up to the 31st of March 2028. Let's take one example. How will local government reorganisation change the number of refuse collection operatives that we need? I can't see it changing it at all in the short term. I can't even see it changing it very much in the medium or long term either. But you're still going to have to collect the bins in the first week of April 2028, just as you had to collect them in the last week of March 2028. And that applies to the functions all across the council. Those basic functions will still need to be provided. And one thing which is absolutely certain is that there will not be some new structure already in place on the 1st of April 2028 to take over. On the 1st of April 2028, whatever our new unitary authority is going to be, will inherit the work which is being done by different members of staff in the different existing councils, and they'll carry on doing that in the old way for some significant time to come, because the expensive process of reorganisation will take a very long time indeed to bed in. So I know that Councillor Hicks made that comment in jest, saying there'll be no one left by the end. That will not be the case.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just really quickly. So there has always been turnover. There will always be turnover. The extent to which that's influenced by LGR obviously remains to be seen. As we've reflected, there is no significant evidence of that right now. We'll work very hard to make sure our talent is retained at this council, because we still have a job to do right up until the 31st of March 2028, assuming that LGR is delivered.
Thank you. There are no more questions, so I'd like to thank you for your attendance today. Particularly, I think we've had some very informative answers and some very honest and open answers, so thank you very much. Okay, so we now move on to agenda item 7, which is an update in relation to the Council's Commercial Investment Board and Strategy. I think you're all going to remain for this. So, would you like to make your presentation? Thank you.
Unless either of the officers wishes to do so, I have to say again, we have produced a very clear report, and I think it opens us up to plenty of questions, and I'd like to spend as much time answering questions rather than just reiterating what's already in the report.
We appreciate that, thank you. The item is now open for discussion, so do we have some questions, please? Shall I? Yes, please. Councillor Woolard.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. My only comment was going to be that little seems to have happened with the Fenland Future projects at Wisbech and Chatteris. But earlier on, you had a very eloquent explanation of the various issues that have been faced on both of those sites. So I'm quite happy to let that go, and having been explained. So my question is going to be a two-part question, and that's on the actual financial spreadsheet that was attached to the report. The first part being that, could you just clarify, it must be a term that I couldn't find a reason for or an explanation of, there were £250,000 fees for DM and DP fees attached to the Chatteris project. If you could clarify what they are actually for. And the second part of the question, again on the spreadsheet, is that there are consultancy fees shown of £191,400 and £117,000 to Instinctively Green, which worries me, plus £41,000 in legal fees. None of those fees and costs have been allocated to either of the major projects. So could you please clarify what they were for and what they covered?
Thank you very much indeed for those questions, Andrew, which are entirely relevant ones. First of all, let me point out that Fenland District Council is not a development company. We're not a house building company. And FFL, which we set up, which is run by officers of the council, it does not have the expertise that is necessary for a development company. So we have to buy that expertise in. We knew that from the very beginning. It wasn't unexpected. So in particular, when it comes to planning, and I'm sorry to say that, we can't go to our planning department and say, can you help us with this planning application we want to make to Fenland District Council? We have to get the directors rather, of FFL have to get external advice to assist them with the planning application to be put in to Fenland District Council. And again, legally, there was no way around that. The trouble with any organisation, especially when you're in a technical one like development companies, is that you end up with jargon which you just get so used to that you don't think that it is jargon, and it's quite impenetrable from the outside. So the DM is the development management cost, and the DP is the development planning cost, both of which are supplied to us by Lovells. And whilst they are currently shown as being against Chatterists, again, not without wanting to go into too much detail, there is sufficient fluidity that if it is advantageous to us, we may decide to change the allocation of that somewhat. And I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, merely to say that as the numbers progress, it may be advantageous to us. And in the way in which we allocate the legal costs that you were talking about, it may be advantageous to us to in one direction rather than another direction, but whatever we do will, of course, be correct. It's just a matter of interpretation sometimes. As far as the legal costs are concerned, I'm sorry to say, it comes with the territory. You know, the company has various things which it has to do. We have to have director training, for example. You've got the land transfers and the legal costs involved in all of that. And what is unfortunate but unavoidable was that FFL had to obtain legal advice on behalf of the directors, on behalf of the company, which was separate from the legal advice that FDC obtained. And you're laughing, Andrew, because you can see exactly where that was coming. But legally, there was no choice. You have to do that. If we didn't do that, then either the directors of FFL might actually be guilty of an offence, or we in the council might be hauled up saying we didn't get best value for the land which was sold. So we've got to be very careful to observe the formalities which exist here, and ultimately there is, or should be, and again LGR can come into this, sufficient profit within this that, given that we are not going to have a developer's profit in it, the overall objective of the company would be achieved, and there would be significant benefit to Fenland District Council in managing to subsidise its revenue account and subsidising the services which are given on an annual basis to residents.
Thank you.
Going back to this project again, are there any, or can you give us any confirmed timelines for delivery and completion of the projects? Because it does seem to the outside world that they're just rolling on and on.
I know the feeling, Maureen. It does feel like that to me sometimes as well. But there have been all sorts of work which has had to go on the technical side, both in terms of what appears on the ground, what has to go in for the planning application, and also the way in which the company is set up and the decisions which have been made. There's been a lot which has had to take place. And as I've already said, we are seriously considering the options which we now have for FFL based on LGR, assuming LGR does go ahead, and how that may change what we had planned. But to answer your question more specifically, as far as the Elms is concerned, if we were to continue to go ahead as planned, as I say, we're currently reviewing that, but if we were to go ahead as planned, we would currently expect that the site would be under construction from July next year, subject to the agreed viability assessments being positive. As far as the Neen waterfront site is concerned in Wisbech, we are in negotiations with an interested party for a significant part of that site, and we are progressing well with the extra care offer on site 5 there. But having secured a successful outline planning application on both sites, we're now in the detailed reserve matters phase. And as I said before, I'm anticipating that they will come, one maybe before the other, but they will come imminently before the planning committee, whom I shall not try to influence from this chair.
There are rising loan costs of 147,000 in 2024-25. At which point do projects become financially unviable and the decision taken to step away?
Thank you for that question. Yes, the 24-25 loan cost is 147,000, and it was projected to increase quite significantly over the course of the forthcoming years as additional capital was required in order to achieve the objectives of the company. I, when all of this was set up, tried my hardest to ensure that this number was as high as possible. And the reason I wanted it to be as high as possible was that it is a mechanism, a perfectly legitimate legal mechanism to do that alchemy job I talked about before of converting what would otherwise be capital appreciation and capital profits into revenue for FTC. And again, the directors of FFL had to look after the interests of the company, so we eventually managed to reach an agreement as to what was the likely cost of capital for FFL if it had been attempting as a standalone organisation to go out to the market and get funding. And I believe we ended up with, and again, the Section 151 officer will correct me on this, I think we ended up with 6% over base as being the figure. I'd have gone for a higher figure if I could have got away with it from FTC's point of view, but that was a decision made, given advice for both parties, for FFL and for FTC. If we did find that there was a significant financial lack of viability, and if we were continuing with the process, and of course we are conducting this review at the moment, then of course things like that could be changed. We wouldn't necessarily look at things in the whole, and we would think, well, it's stupid to cut off our nose to spite our face. Let's face financial reality. Let's say, and there's no reason to believe this, but let's say the housing market crashed. You wouldn't want to just stop because there was an absolutely unviable loan interest payment to be made to FTC by FFL. So we have mechanisms in place, or would have mechanisms in place, to be able to deal with significant financial, unexpected financial lack of viability. I'm not anticipating that that's going to be the case at all, and I believe that once we review the current situation in the light of LGR, we'll actually have options in front of us. We won't be forced into any one direction, but we will have options. And I think that that's very important for us to have options so that we can make the right decision. We, for Fenland District Council, and also the officers of FFL on behalf of the company.
Thank you. Sorry, there have been no formal investment board meetings in 24-25, so how is governance being maintained?
Well, that is going back a bit now. Investment board meetings, there seemed very little point in holding investment board meetings if decisions weren't being made and if it weren't necessary for us to hold a formal meeting and to make such a decision. What had happened is that every month the investment board members received an update of what the situation was, and that provided us with a great deal of insight as to what was happening. Additionally, although not formally, governance was being achieved, good governance was being achieved by you, Maureen, as chairman of this committee, and by me being observers on the meetings of the board of FFL. And that provided you, from the point of view of this overview and scrutiny panel, and me, from the point of view of the Cabinet, a good degree of assurance that things were still going according to plan and that we knew where we were and it wasn't necessary to start conducting further investigations about what the situation was. So it wasn't necessary to hold meetings of the investment board when there weren't major decisions which had to be made by the investment board, but we continued through informal means to exercise good governance.
Thank you for that. And to receive the answer, because it never looks good when someone looks down a list and sees cancelled, cancelled, cancelled. So hopefully from today people can see the reason why. Thank you.
Just to agree with your comment, it would be a lot worse if we had emergency meetings of the investment board taking place every other month because there were problems. So the cancellation should be seen in a very positive light, not a negative one, in the context also of those informal governance arrangements which I talked about.
Thank you. What impact will LGR have on Fenland Future Limited assets, so like governance and accountability?
Well, I think I've accidentally answered this largely. We have very much in mind the fact that we have an obligation, or there is an obligation upon Fenland Future Limited to have a business plan which is published by the 31st of January. And whilst that is the responsibility of the directors of Fenland Future Limited, they are not deaf to words which come from Fenland District Council. So we are reviewing what the situation is in terms of LGR and the impact LGR may have. We won't know by the 31st of January whether LGR is definitely going ahead, although we'll get greater confidence and assurance that it is going ahead if it hasn't been pulled by then or changed by then. But nevertheless, it gives us the opportunity to look at those options. And there are a number of options. I don't really want to go into detail on them now, partly because we haven't done any work on any of the options. I haven't even got any numbers in the back of my head. So we will be looking at those options. We will be looking at how we may move forward in the light of LGR, and we'll bring that back to Council, to the Cabinet, to the Investment Board for decisions to be made. And of course, those decisions will be open to scrutiny by all members, and certainly by the Overview and Scrutiny Panel.
Is there an exit strategy for underperforming or stalled projects?
Well, if we're talking more widely here, not just about Fenland Future Limited, but about everything that we've got under the investment committee's remit, the basic answer is almost no. Almost because we don't really need one, and if there needs to be an exit strategy, it will be obvious what it is at the time. We do have a situation where we have a facility which was made available back in some time ago, back in 2021, 2020, of £25 million to support our investment strategy. We have done little more than scratch the surface of that £25 million, not for the want of trying, but again, I'm starting to come back to Andrew's word before, because we've been very prudent. I've had offers also put forward to me some 75 different opportunities over that period, mostly over the beginning of the period, it has to be said. And of those 75, we ended up only going forward with 2 of the commercial opportunities which arose in the commercial market. And one of those 2, the other side pulled out before an agreement was reached. So we only actually had 1 commercial investment, which is mentioned in the report, I believe, the commercial premises in Wisbech, where we have a current income of £230,000 per annum, which is going to increase and which has been working perfectly well over that time. In retrospect, could we have done more? Most definitely. Should we have done more? Well, the danger is that the caution that we showed might have been justified. And if we'd started this process 5 years earlier, we'd have a massive portfolio on our hands now. But as interest rates have been stubbornly high, it's been really difficult to make the economic justification for that sort of commercial acquisition. And I'm very sorry not to have done that, because it would be quite exciting to do it. But we erred on the side of caution. And using Andrew's word, we were prudent in what we did. It may turn out, people might say we were too prudent, but I'd far rather be accused of being too prudent than be in the position of some of those local authorities around the country which have got debt of not just millions, not just hundreds of millions, but of billions of pounds around their neck. And I would hate to be in a position coming before the Overview and Scrutiny Panel and trying to justify being in that situation. Now, of course, our Section 151 officer would never have allowed us to get that far. But having said that, it was always a matter of judgment, and we were prudent in what we did. We also did use part of that facility for some other purposes, which are investment purposes. We did, for example, have the acquisition of some housing, which we did in this way because we were getting a very significant amount. It was, I think, 40% of the capital cost of housing was made available to us on certain schemes by central government, and we'd been foolish not to have snapped their hand up on that. If you can get 40% off the cost of housing, then it would be, it certainly wouldn't be prudent to say, oh, let's think about that one. We just did it. Additionally, there is another property that we purchased in quite interesting circumstances, which was purchased in order to open up the investment potential of another piece of land that we owned in March. And that was a very sensible thing to do. It hasn't been realised yet. It's one of the things we'll have to consider how we move forwards on now, given local government reorganisation. So we did make that purchase as well. But that particular property is being utilised for our housing needs anyway. So it's already repaying itself, although it will repay itself in another way when decision is made to allow access through that site to open up a much larger site that we have in our ownership. So sorry to have gone on for some time. So there isn't an exit strategy as such, because basically the sort of investments that we've made don't require those exit strategies. And if we find ourselves in a situation that we've got that problem, then we have to deal with it immediately in the same way that any commercial landlord would have to deal with properties with problems to do with their property. One of the problems that we've got in that, of course, is that we have such a small portfolio, for the reasons which I explained, that we don't have the diversification which would allow us easily to deal with that. And that comes, I'm sorry to say, with the territory. If we had 20 times as many properties, then undoubtedly we'd have some problems with some of the properties and we'd need to consider exit strategies in them. We have a much smaller number, so we don't have those problems, but if we did have it, it would have a disproportionate effect on us. That's the situation we're in as a result of being so prudent in what we actually invested in and having utilised so small an amount of that £25 million facility.
Thanks for that. That being the case, I'd like to say thank you for attending and giving us all the information that you have. Thank you.
Chairman, may I stay for the next item as well, please?
Oh, most certainly.
Thank
you. Right, the next agenda item is number 8, and it is the use of waiver provisions. The report in relation to item 8 can be found at pages 67 to 70 of the agenda pack and confirms the occasion since the last meeting when I, as the chairperson, have been asked to exercise the authority to waive the ordinary requirements in relation to the forward plan. Is that duly noted? And Councillor, you wanted to come in there?
Thank you very much indeed. It's necessary to have this waiver facility in place because the council has to operate, and sometimes the council's own rules makes it difficult to operate. So a waiver sometimes has to be exercised. But it's not desirable to exercise this waiver unless you absolutely have to. And we have gone out of our way to try to ensure that waivers wouldn't normally be required. An example being what's happening this week. We have, on Friday this week, a meeting of council and then a meeting of cabinet to discuss the proposals that we will put forward to government for local government reorganisation. The deadline for submission for our proposals is the 28th of November, and other councils are meeting much closer to that date of 28th of November. And we've brought it forward to this week deliberately so that if there is any call-in provision by anyone, as there is legally entitled to be, that we'll be able to have the call-in, we'll be able to have the necessary meeting, we'll be able to still to meet that 28th of November deadline without having to go to Maureen as chairman of this committee and ask her, please exercise a waiver. And I think it's really important, first of all, that we recognise that waivers are sometimes unavoidable, they're unpredicted, and they have to happen, but that we need, wherever possible, to keep them to a minimum because they're not an example of good governance. They're a matter sometimes of necessity overcoming the governance rules that we've got. So I'm pleased with the balance we've got. I hope that the chairman of this committee is pleased with it as well, and I hope that she'll say so, or otherwise, because that balance is a really important one.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm quite happy that I'm not asked to exercise it unduly. there have been a couple where I've gone back for further information because I haven't been quite convinced, but the officers have actually come up and said the full reasons why, and then I've gone ahead. So. Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Thank you. Right, agenda item, hello. We've just jumped from 9 to 13. There. It's agenda item 9, and that's to update on previous actions, and you'll find this information at pages 71, 72 of the pack. Is that report duly noted too?
Yeah.
Yep, thank
Can
you.
I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the report has missed part of the printout, so I've got no idea the ongoing actions from the 9th of June, where they are, if there's any of the portfolio holders here that would know that.
I think some of them have left now. They've gone.
Can we ask member services then to get that information out to us?
But apart from that, we're happy with that report, so we can sign that off. Future work programme, which is agenda item 10. The next item on appears at pages 73 to 80 of the pack, and the future work programme sets out the planned business for the panel for the forthcoming municipal year. Are there any questions or suggestions in relation to the future work programme? None, you're all happy. We will have to slightly jiggle things around because, as you will realise, we had to cancel a meeting because of the last by-election. So we are having to shuffle some things around. So what you've actually got as the forward plan at the moment might actually change. Thank you. It's urgent, there are none. And that actually is the final item on the agenda, so I think the next meeting is scheduled to take place on the 1st of December at 10 o'clock, back to our normal timing. Thank you all very much for attending. Thank you.